Most fantasy worlds are beautifully designed and completely unbelievable. They have detailed maps, elaborate histories, hundreds and hundreds of pages of lore, and they still feel artificial. Meanwhile, some campaigns feel alive from the get-go. Why? Today I want to talk to you about the secret that makes a fantasy world feel real, and why Greyhawk remains as one of the best examples ever created. Today on Greyhawk Grognard. The problem with most fantasy worlds, they're too tidy. And this is something I've alluded to in some of my other videos. Real real places are messy. They aren't tidy. They don't, like the borders don't make sense. Kingdoms are not internally unified. Everyone doesn't know the same history, and the good guys are not obviously different than the bad guys. If you design your world so that everything is rigid and makes sense, and yes, everybody knows everything, and everything is it makes it feel artificial. It could be as beautifully designed as you could make it, but it's still going to feel tinny. It's going to feel too set because reality is messy, right? You don't want to have a situation where everything makes sense because reality doesn't make sense. The real world doesn't make sense. And if you want your fantasy world to feel more like your real world, then it can't make sense. You want it to be contradictory. History is incomplete. History is irrational. History is relative. The history of, say, the Great Kingdom, as the Great Kingdom understands it, is going to be very different than the history of say, the city of Irongate, because they're going to have completely different perspectives on things, to use a Greyhawk analogy, which I'll be doing a lot of, as you might expect. Um, but if you have history and everybody just knows objective history from the get-go, nobody does that. And that goes for a fantasy world as well as it does for the real world. And when you do have these kinds of conflicting histories and conflicting understandings of motives and stuff, you get disputed borders, you get ancient grudges, you get forgotten wars, you get conflicting religions, you get all this kind of beautiful stuff because messiness makes conflict and conflict makes story. Reality is messy. Your fantasy game should be messy too. Part of that involves history. And so many settings and so many DMs treat history like a timeline. It's just a list of events. This person became king, this kingdom invaded this kingdom, this war happened, this king died, yada yada, all the way down the line. But that's not what history is. History is about motives. Why did this happen? Why does this event impact this other event that happens 50 years later? Those sorts of connections are based on motive. Why did that war start? And you get this, you see this a lot in the world of Greyhawk. Even though, as I pointed out in another video, history in Greyhawk is a lot more condensed than it seems. Because a lot of things are happening within just the last couple hundred years when it feels like thousands of years, and that's actually a good thing. But in the world of Greyhawk, you have things like the Backloonish and Sewell War. You have the Iridian and Sewell migrations. You've got the rise and fall of the Great Kingdom. You've got the rise of the Iron League against the Great Kingdom and what impact that had. And then, of course, you've got the Greyhawk Wars, which are a tangle. They're actually 3 or 4 different wars just all happening at the same time, all with different motivations, all with different histories, all with different impacts. And it's all messy. And you want that. You want your history to feel like it's actually meaningful because, oh, yeah, such and such a king died 100 years ago. So what? What does that do? Did that lead to the war that happened 3 years later? Maybe so. And that gives it much more of a realistic feel. History is not just a source book timeline. It's something that the characters can see, and it's something that can impact the characters today. And we talked about the history in another video as well. But that's the key. History is messy, history is contradictory, history is subjective, and it should be in your game too. And here's a little trick. This is a quick one, but People don't care about the big picture as a rule. They care about what impacts them directly. So if your players are in a little village, they're not going to be interested in these. Oh, here's a big there's a big war happening and so forth. It has to impact them. They don't care about cosmic destiny. They care about the taxes, or there's bandits raiding my crops, or the crops failed, or such and such lord is claiming my pasture, and my lord doesn't want to help me keep it. Or hey, the king. If you do want to bring in big politics onto the local level, the king's men came around and conscripted all of our military age menfolk. That brings the big conflicts into the small time, and that's what your NPCs are going to care about, and that's how you can make the PCs care about. Make it local. Bring everything down to the local level. That will make it feel more real. Now, here's something that a lot of world builders forget. Nations need a reason to exist. They're not just there. So many times, like a fantasy author or a game designer, the reason a kingdom exists is because there was a blank space on the map, and the DM needed to fill it up with another kingdom. Okay, I mean, no, that's not how the real world works. That's too neat. And going along with this, you also don't want your kingdoms to be eternal, right? To go to the world of Greyhawk again, um, the kingdoms, they come, they go, their borders fluctuate. One kingdom rules over another, and then that one piece breaks off and forms their own kingdom, and then those two go to war and they're rivals. It's very messy and very realistic. So your kingdoms should not be eternal, and they should all have a reason to exist. So, again, to take some examples from Greyhawk, you know, the reason that you have some of these kingdoms existing is could be for geography. Like Perrinland. Perrinland, which is right here, you can see it's surrounded by the mountains. It's there because the mountains form a natural geographic boundary for it. So it makes sense that there's a kingdom there that conforms to those boundaries. It could be trade. That's where we get Verbabank and Greyhawk and Divers and those, that whole Velverdiva River corridor that's south and west of the Near Dive, which is right behind me. It could be for military concerns. You've got Bissell here and the Grand March and so forth. They're there. They were formed to form military buffers against enemies. They could just be historical. The Great Kingdom. That's there because that's where the Iridian settlers finally ended, and that's where the Great Kingdom got founded, and then they pushed back to the west. But look at Furiandi. Furiandi got its existence, as did many of the kingdoms in the Flyness, because the Great Kingdom became weak and dissolute. So the outermost provinces broke away and got their own independence, and then that's sort of a historical march to the east as more and more lands that used to be part of the Overking's domain got their own independence. Nyrond is the same way. The Pomarch exists because of the wars that happened 100 years before that drove all the humanoids out of the Lortmill Mountains into the Pomarch, and then they enslaved all the humans that were there. So the war started the chain reaction of events that leads to the humanoids owning the Pomarch, and then later on they come out and they start taking over the Wild Coast. So the idea is nations shouldn't just be names. They should also be they should have reasons to exist. History should compel them, or geography or trade or something. They shouldn't just exist because you needed to fill a blank in the map. They should exist because they have a reason to exist. And the last one I'm going to give for today is factions. I love me factions. Whether they're in a dungeon or in a broader campaign setting, the factions make the world go round because each different faction should have its own goals. It should have its own conflicts with other factions. And those goals and conflicts are going to be what drives the action in your campaign setting behind the scenes. Everything shouldn't revolve around the PCs, right? So in so many campaigns that I've played in personally or that I've run for to be perfectly honest. The campaign around the players just kind of remains static. It's just always there, and it only ever changes if the PCs either intervene directly, or if the DM wants to do something to motivate the PCs, right? So you don't have a war unless it's going to involve the PCs. You don't have you don't have the evil overlord get deposed unless it's the PCs who do it. That sort of thing. That should not be the case. Each faction, and you should identify all the different factions in your campaign and what their goals are, and how they're going to achieve those goals. And then all those factions in conflict behind the scenes are what drive present day history, current events. All this stuff is happening in the background while the PCs are wading across the tableau, and that is how you bring a campaign to life. That's what makes it feel real. Is that it's not just a frozen box that stays the same until the PCs enter that area. There should be movement constantly around in the background, and the PCs should be aware of it. And in fact, I'm working on a book that's going to give you methods and mechanisms to do exactly that. But more on that later. But the big idea is, don't have the campaign setting just be this glacial wall that only melts when the PCs focus their attention on it. The campaign should be a living, breathing thing, even if the PCs just stay in the tavern and drink. So there we are. The secret to having a living, feeling campaign, a realistic campaign, isn't just to pile on more lore. It's to give consequences. It's to give history. It's to give conflict. It's to give reasons for that lore to be meaningful to the PCs and to the NPCs in the locale of the campaign. The campaign should feel like it's existed before the PCs got there, and it will continue to exist and live and breathe even when the PCs are gone. So, hope you like this one. Let me know what you think in the comments. I will throw up some links to some videos that I think will reinforce this point and help you. If you would be so kind, I do have a Patreon where you can throw me a few bucks each month to help me keep going on these videos. You can join the channel for the same reason. You get some benefits. You get early access to my Greyhawk videos. You get different versions of modules when they come out. Some other things you get every once in a while. I do a supporter only thing. So please do consider doing it. I will put a link below. Hope you're all having a wonderful day, and I'll talk to y'all later.